Well, I'm Tina Loza. I am a board member with the Los Angeles County Fair Association, and I am super humbled today to welcome all of our honored guests and dignitaries to the dedication of this plaque here recognizing the Japanese Assembly Center once housed here on the grounds of the LA County Fair. With us today are Pomona Council Member Paula Lance. Hi, Paula. Benny Ayala representing Senator Castaneda.
It's in the back.
There. Yolanda Fuqua on behalf of Supervisor Hilda Solis. She's right there. Hi. Daniel Martinez from Congresswoman Norma Torres' office. The Honorable Akira Chiba, Consul General of Japan in Los Angeles. And Deputy Consul General Kazutoshi Hayashi. We've gathered here today to honor the past and to unveil this plaque dedicated to the 5,514 Japanese Americans detained at the Los Angeles County Fair during World War II. It was 74 years ago today, so amazing, that the majority of the detainees were sent to Hart Mountain, Wyoming after being detained here for 3 months. Today, we will hear from representatives that had a role in the creation and operation of the Assembly Center, and also from a representative of those detained here in 1942. I feel so fortunate to be able to hear these stories today. While nothing remains of the actual site of the Assembly Center, this particular spot was chosen to allow for visits as desired by those who were here in 1942, and for family, friends, and the community to reflect upon this time in our history. Right now, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Bill Fujioka, who's here with the Los Angeles County Fair Association. Bill?
I'm a member of the Fair Association. I recently retired as the county chief executive officer. But I'm here today. I think it's a very, very special reason for me being here today. Both sides of my family, the Fujioka and the Kuroiwa family, when they were removed from their homes, came to this facility for a short time before going to Hart Mountain. All of my family went with the exception of my grandfather. My grandfather had the dubious distinction of being the first person the military picked up following the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And he was taken to first a military post and then placed in Leavenworth for about 18 months with no charges whatsoever. His name was Fred Jiro Fujioka. That period of time was a very, very dark period of time for our country. The fact that American citizens, and I know we have a number of Nisei here, who what they did during that time should be honored forever. Not just today, not next month, but this plaque does that. We'll recognize what happened. And my family went on to Hart. I had uncles who fought in the 442. My father received a Bronze Star. My uncle also received a Bronze Star. And was part of the unit that actually liberated Dachau death camp. But what's a little known fact is when they liberated them, the superiors came in and said, we can't have Japanese liberating this death camp because they'll look bad because their parents are in their own camps in the United States. So they forced the Jewish prisoners back into the barracks, causing complete turmoil. Told the Japanese soldiers, Japanese American soldiers, to leave the camp. Well, they brought in a white army contingent so they could have the newsreel film as if the whites liberated that camp. It was a very, very dark time. I'm exceptionally proud of being Japanese American. My grandfather and my father told me about this period of time that said, you need to show people that you're a good American. You need to show people that you're strong and that the Japanese community will thrive. Well, we did that. My brother's a judge right now, and I'm retired. It's a very good life. But I'm very, very honored and humbled and proud of the association. Well, I'm humbled to be here, but proud of the association for taking this time to make sure that people remember and to honor the Japanese Americans who have done so much before the war, after the war, and it'll continue through the next generations. But God bless you. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for coming out today. My name is Dwight Richards, and I'm the Vice President of Operations for Fairplex. And today I thought I'd share with you a little bit of the perspective after going back through our history and looking at some of our documents, sort of the perspective of the association in 1941 and 2, and give you some of the insight of that side of what happened here. So in September of 1941, we had just celebrated our 19th fair. It was a phenomenal one. It was a record breaker. There was grand optimism for the 1942 fair. And obviously the events in December radically changed that. Nationwide, there was over 2,200 fairgrounds that were looked at as potential facilities to be used by the war effort. And several hundred of them were chosen. And due to the nature and size of Fairplex, at that time the LA County Fairgrounds, it was selected by the Army very quickly to begin setting up a key role in the war effort. In the latter part of December, troops from the United States Army began arriving to the fairgrounds to utilize this facility as a maintenance and training center for men and equipment that would be eventually... Oh no. we have wind. Thanks, Mickey. For deployment of men and equipment off to the North African theater. In early February of 1942, the association actually prepared a lease with the Department of the Army. At that time, the entire fairgrounds, including the land, was privately owned. So we leased it to the federal government at that point in time. And at this point, even looking back in some of the old documents, there was optimism that we would actually continue to hold a fair in 1942 and you know, be probably more of a propaganda, probably more of a war effort, certainly promote the agricultural and development of food for troops and so forth. But everything changed a little bit with Executive Order 9066. That really changed. On April 4th, it was decided that there would be a temporary assembly center created on 80 acres of our land here at the Fairplex. So that's about 1/5 of what we have. And that made it clear at that point in time that the role of the fairgrounds was going to be focused on the war effort, and obviously would be no fair coming up. There were over 420 buildings erected. They included residential halls, hospitals, churches, mess halls, police, fire stations, post office, and a bank. Virtually a full city. The detainees began arriving in early May, and some of those I understand are here today. No bacon was one. And in less than 4 months, 74 years to this day, the camp was closed, and most of the detainees were transferred up to Hart Mountain. The occupation of the Army continued until 1947, and upon their departure, the hastily built camp was for the most part dismantled. In the early 1960s, the last remnants of the original camp had fallen to decay and were finally removed. And this created a challenge for the association, for the detainees, and for their families. There was no remnant of the camp. There was no place to pay homage. There was no place to reflect and remind future generations of the freedoms and rights of the individuals and citizens for who and which we have fought and defended time and time again. So today we'll dedicate this monument behind me to our history, but more importantly, to place a mark to remind our children of the actions of the past. I would like to thank Bacon Sakatani and the Pomona Assembly Committee. I would like to thank Mickey Gallivan with the, okay, I'm going to try to get this right, the Historical Society of Pomona. Yeah, for their participation in the placement of this plaque. I would also like to thank Sharon Autry, who is in our Community Relations Department, who has actually lobbied for this plaque for over 20 years. I've been here 33. She's been pushing this, and she orchestrated much of this, and she's done a fantastic job, and we're excited. So again, thank you for being here. We'll unveil the plaque in a little bit. We have, I think the next speaker is the Council General.
I appreciate the opportunity to join you today at this dedication ceremony. I'd like to especially acknowledge the members of the Japanese American community here today, especially those whose families personally experienced life at Pomona Assembly Center. Nothing can reverse the suffering that Japanese Americans experienced during World War II under internment. But as with the granting of redress and reparations from the U.S. government under the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, I hope that today's dedication will offer some measure of peace and healing through acknowledgement of the pain that so many of you experienced. Last August, which marked the 70th anniversary of the Second World War, Prime Minister Abe issued a special statement. In that statement, he reflected that we must learn from the lessons of history, the wisdom for our future. He went on to explain, we will engrave in our hearts the past when Japan ended up becoming a challenger to the international order. Upon this reflection, Japan will firmly uphold basic values such as freedom, democracy, and human rights as unyielding values, and by working hand in hand with countries that share such values, hoist the flag of proactive contribution for peace and contribute to the peace and prosperity of the world more than ever before. Incidentally, Prime Minister Abe was here in LA on Monday, and I briefed him about the plight of the Japanese Americans during the Second World War. One of the greatest developments after World War II has been the evolution of the U.S.-Japan relationship, which has led to the two countries working hand in hand to advance and defend shared democratic values. My late father, Kazuo, was in the Imperial Japanese Navy, and I'm lucky he did not have to see you eye to eye on the battlefield. Two once bitter enemies now form one of the strongest alliances maintaining peace in the world. For this, Japan owes a debt of gratitude to Japanese Americans who have always been and continue to be crucial bridge builders in the bilateral relationship. This would not have been possible without the tremendous sacrifices and resilience of Japanese Americans in the midst of great hardship. I extend my deepest gratitude. Among those who were interned at Pomona Assembly Center, I would like to especially recognize and pay tribute to all the veterans who served in the U.S. military, and especially those who lost their lives in combat. I'd also like to acknowledge the members of the Military Intelligence Service who were particularly instrumental in victors helping the vanquished recover after the war. Asano-san, Hashimoto-san, ご苦労様でした。There's a great deal they can do to shape our futures. And I would like to thank the Pomona Fairplex for this historic acknowledgement that you make today. May we all work together towards a brighter future for all, and may we continue to honor, recognize, and memorialize the inspiring legacy of the Japanese American community for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm pooped out already. Oh, my voice has gone out. A very good morning to all of you, to the good people of Fairplex, to the Honorable Consul General Chiba of Japan in Los Angeles, to the Historical Society of Pomona Valley, to the former people of Pomona Assembly Center, the relative drivers, caretakers, and friends. The Pomona Assembly Center Committee and the Historical Society of Pomona Valley wish to thank Fairplex for providing the plaque to remember that at one time the Pomona Assembly Center did exist at the parking lot. Let me give you a brief background as a person who was here in 1942. After Japan attacked Pearl Harbor and the West Coast seemed would be invaded by the Japanese forces, an order was issued to remove all persons of Japanese ancestry from the West Coast. The U.S. Army took over the Pomona Fairgrounds as a national emergency and made it into a temporary detention center for Japanese Americans. In May 1942, the first order to report to Pomona Assembly Center was posted on walls and telephone poles. It stated, "To all persons of Japanese ancestry, all aliens and non-aliens, you have 6 days to report to the fairgrounds with only what you can carry." We were told we need not bring our mattresses, for when we arrived, the Army had ready for us canvas bags to fill with straw. We were housed in tar paper covered barracks with room 20 feet by 20 feet. We had community bathrooms and cafeteria, and that was it. Then we got talents within the camp and put on weekly talent show. We sat on the open bare ground. It didn't matter, as we came to enjoy this event and had something to look forward to every week. We had softball games to keep us occupied, for the authority knew that the best way to handle us was to make us happy campers. When the permanent center in the inland United States was finished in August, we were all shipped to Heart Mountain, Wyoming. One item of the Pomona Assembly Center is never mentioned is that the fact that from this center of over 5,000, some 285 persons would later serve in the U.S. Army to prove their loyalty to the land of their birth. Joe Hayashi was already in the Army when his family was sent here. When the all-Japanese American 442nd Regimental Combat Team was sent to Europe to fight in the war, Hayashi was killed in action and was awarded the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest award for bravery. A memorial has been placed in his honor at the Victory Park in Pasadena. Lieutenant Mo Yonemura was the most popular person here at Pomona for being the MC for our weekly talent show. He was an honor student at UCLA, the head yell leader, a student body officer, a reserve officer training student, was killed in action and received the Silver Star, the nation's third highest award for bravery, and 2 Purple Hearts. UCLA named a scholarship in his name, and the Reserve Officer Training Lodge at UCLA is named after him. Lieutenant Kei Tanahashi, another reserve officer from UCLA, was also killed in action in Europe and received the Silver Star and Purple Heart. Stanley Hayami from nearby San Gabriel also gave his life and received the Bronze Star and Purple Heart. Yasuo Kenbotsu from El Monte was killed in action and received the Purple Heart. We are honored here today that the brother, sister, and nephew of Joe Hayashi are here with us today there. Dr. George Kawakami, sitting back there, is here today. Was a high school student when he was here at Pomona, and after he was sent to Heart Mountain, Wyoming, and graduated high school, he volunteered into the Army to show his loyalty to the United States. Dr. Tak Hoshizaki is here today, was also a high school student, and after he was sent to Heart Mountain and was called by the Army, he challenged the Army to restore his American constitutional rights before he would serve. He was convicted and sent to prison. He was pardoned by President Truman, and then with his rights now restored, when the Korean War started a few years later and was again asked to serve in the military, he served. We have another draft resistor in Yosh Kuromiya with us today. He was a student at Pasadena Junior College when he was ordered to report to Pomona. After he was sent to Heart Mountain, and when he was called to serve in the Army, he too asked for the return of his constitutional rights and was sent to prison along with Dr. Hoshizaki. Many years later, Pasadena City College gave him an honorary degree. At one point, as a football player at Citrus, he led the entire nation in football scoring. After he was sent here and then to Wyoming, he served in the military. Just a couple of years ago, Citrus College presented him with an honorary degree. It's because of people like Joe Hayashi that we are here today, as his heroic actions, along with the rest of the 285 persons who served in World War II, that made U.S. realize that it made a mistake here at the Pomona Assembly Center. After the war ended, my family came back to California. We could not find a place to stay, so we got a tent. Then we found a farm just over the hill by the freeway in Pomona. I went to Pomona High School, and my sister and I were the only Japanese there. I remember eating my lunch at the football field by myself. I was a nobody, an outsider, a loner. When I had to give a talk in front of my class, it was a scary moment. The teacher was a Navy veteran back from the war. The title of my talk was, "I am an American too." I told him how I was in the camp at this fair, behind barbed wire fence and armed guard towers with searchlights. How I spent 3 months here and then sent to Wyoming for the duration of the war. I knew then my classmates knew nothing about what I went through, and when I told them about the armed guard, I was looked upon as part of the enemy, some kind of a bad person, because why else would the Army do such a thing? Too bad that my high school class is not here today to read this plaque, to hear the rest of my story, how I served in the U.S. Army in the Korean War, to show them that I was a loyal American citizen and not the enemy. What happened here was a long time ago. Most of us here today were just teenagers back in 1942, obeying orders as we were taught to do from our parents. But through the years, the U.S. came to realize the great mistake they made in placing us here. The President of the U.S. apologized to each of us, just as Tosh and Yosh received their honorary degrees from their colleges. We, the Pomona Assembly people, are receiving our honorary degree from the fair, some 74 years later, in the form of this plaque, recognizing at last that we were here. We appreciate very much those kind words from the Honorable Consul General. When he didn't have to come, his country was our former enemy, the defeated country, when he could have said that it was not a problem of his generation. It is a rare moment to have Japan, the U.S. Army, the fair, and the people involved together that made this a California historical landmark. On behalf of all Pomona Assembly Center people, thank you very, very much to the fair, to Sharon Autry, the Historical Society of Pomona Valley, Mickey Gallivan and Deborah Clifford, the Consul General, and the Army for this day. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm, as you said, Captain Davis at the San Gabriel Valley Recruiting Company. First off, I'd like to say, on February 19th, 1942, President Franklin D. Roosevelt issued Executive Order 9066. This This order prescribed certain areas of the United States as a military zone. Then on the 7th of May 1942, the Pomona Assembly area had opened. For the next 3.5 months, a man much like myself was charged with the duties of containing almost 5,500 Americans of Japanese descent. Even though in 1988 and 1992, Congress apologized for the internment of Japanese Americans, I am not at the liberty to apologize for the actions of my predecessors. But please understand that I am deeply saddened for the trials that your families have endured. I understand that it may not be much, but on behalf of the San Gabriel Valley Recruiting Company, we would like to present you with this trifold American flag as a symbol of your unwavering commitment to this country, regardless of how negatively at one point it treated its members of its own country.
All right, guys, we'd like to dedicate this plaque to the Pomona Assembly Center. Thank you very much. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
The boss.